This video is going to be a review of chapters 1 and 2 of Claire Huchet Bishop's 20 and 10, which was illustrated by William Penn Du Bois. So, before our digital learning experience took place, we were reading this book, but that kind of got cut short due to the coronavirus. And so, we are going to continue reading this book, but I did want to give you guys a quick refresher of what we had read so far. So, we did begin, when we first initially read the book, with this back section. It says, "If we take these children, we can never betray them, no matter what the Nazis do." During the German occupation of France, 20 French children were brought to a refuge in the mountains. One day, a young man came to their school with a request. "Could you take in and hide 10 Jewish refugee children?" Sister Gabrielle spoke up. "The Nazis are looking for those children. If we take them in, we must never let on that they are here. Do you understand?" Of course the children understood. But how would they hide them if the Nazis came? So, starting with chapter 1. We have our first chapter called Make Believe. In this chapter, it begins with our narrator. It's a girl named Janet. She's telling the story of when she was 11 years old, and it happened. And it all began when they were playing Make Believe, her and the 19 other children that lived in the mountains. They had moved to the mountains away from their families due to the German occupation of France during World War II. And so, while all this was happening, this was just after the Christmas vacation, and the students decided to play a game of make-believe that revolved around the Christmas holiday. So, the children were deciding to play a game called the Flight into Egypt. And in this game, it centered around the biblical characters of Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And in this story, it was after the birth of Jesus Christ, and the children were going into Egypt to take refuge with the Egyptians during this time. And they stated that they had no money, and they had no water, and they had none of these things. And so the students, their children, eventually got into a huge argument at first about who should play Mary, if she was fair-skinned or lighter-skinned, or darker-skinned and darker-haired, like Jewish. And so eventually the students decided to side with Janet, who was more fair-skinned and fair-haired, to play the role of Mary in this case. And then they continued to get into another argument, as children often do, as to whether or not the people of Egypt should require Mary, Joseph, and Jesus to pay for items that they're taking. So to pay for their food and their water and their clothes, even though they were refugees. And so, eventually, the altercation gets heated, and the children actually begin fist fighting. And so they get into a huge battle, a huge war over whether or not the students or the Egyptians should make these refugees pay as they're there. And this was all led by Henry, who was insisting that these Jewish people pay as they're coming into this land. And even though they don't have any rationing cards or they don't have any identification, they could just be running a scam, and it's just not fair that the hardworking Egyptians have to give up their items because some refugees come along. And then this whole argument and this whole fight gets stopped when the nun of their school, Sister Gabrielle, comes with a man who has an announcement. And the announcement is that he has brought 10 Jewish children who need to take refuge at their school. And so the children all agree to hide these Jewish children from the Nazi soldiers. And so chapter 2 is called Gold. In this chapter, the 20 French children meet the 10 Jewish children, and they realize that they're not so different from them. They look like normal kids, and they're not understanding why exactly the Germans hate Jewish children so much and they would want to capture them. And so they do realize that they are a little bit different from them in the fact that these children are hungry. And so when they get to their dining hall or to their lunch area, they realize that their rations, or the amount of food that they get on a daily basis, has been cut almost in half. And they realize that it's because these Jewish children don't have identification, and so they can't get ration cards. Because if they got identification cards and ration cards, then the German soldiers would know exactly where they were. And so, because of that, they don't have any extra food for these 10 additional children, and so they realize that things are going to be a bit different having these additional students living with them. And so they have to make adjustments, and at this breakfast or lunchtime, they, especially one of the students, realizes that these children are much hungrier than them and haven't been eating in days, if not weeks. And so Henry, the boy who had started the whole fight about not giving Jesus, Mary, and Joseph free food and free clothing and free water in the Egypt game, decides that he's actually going to give his favorite meal all to a new student, all to this refugee child. And so, because of that, the student Arthur gifts him with a piece of gold. And some of the students realized that Arthur had given him this piece of gold, but no one exactly knew what this golden item was. And so many of the students, including our narrator, Janet, and another girl, Denise, were begging to find out what that piece of gold was. And she wouldn't tell them. But then eventually, later that evening, Henry called over Janet and told her to follow him. And once she did, they went to the woods. Henry revealed that the piece of gold that was given to him was actually a piece of chocolate. And they had not seen chocolate in ages. It had been months, if not years, since the last time these students had seen chocolate. And so they were ecstatic to see it. It was just one small piece of chocolate in a little wrapper, but they were on top of the world. And so instead of eating it all up all at once, they decided to just lick their finger, rub it against the piece of chocolate, and just lick their finger to get that little bit of chocolate off of it. And they decided that they're going to make a pact to only eat the chocolate together. And so they decided to hide the chocolate in the woods under a rock so that no one would be able to find it, and it would be their little secret. And so on the way back, they heard a rustle, and they thought that they might have been followed or someone could have been out and about in the woods when they were there too. And they were super scared because they're not supposed to be in the woods. And so that's exactly where chapter 2 leaves off.